Why do so many men chase women's attention but never earn their obsession? Here's the brutal truth. She's not ignoring you because you're too nice or not rich enough. She's ignoring you because you don't yet matter deeply to her psyche. And that's not her fault. That's your responsibility. You're trying to win her with surface-level charm while starving her soul of substance. But obsession, real, soul-burning obsession, isn't built on game. It's built on gravity, emotional weight, psychological depth. A man who shifts her worldview. And the moment you understand that, everything changes. This isn't about manipulation, it's about transformation. About becoming the kind of man whose presence haunts her thoughts in the best way possible, whose absence feels like silence in a room that used to sing. You want her deeply obsessed? Then stop performing. Start becoming. Because obsession isn't triggered, it's earned. Let's dive into the 7 hidden truths no one dares to tell you, but every man needs to hear. Why is it that some women can't forget you? Even when they try, even when they swear they've moved on. Let me tell you something unsettling, something most people are too afraid to admit. It's not always love that leaves the lasting mark. It's impact. It's the psychological fingerprint you left behind when you showed up in a way no one else ever did. Now ask yourself, were you a man of presence, or were you just another fleeting ghost in her chaotic memory? We live in a culture that treats relationships like fast food, quick, convenient, disposable. But the soul doesn't digest love that way. Real connection, lasting connection, is carved into the nervous system. You become part of her cognitive map, her routines, her emotions, her patterns, and that doesn't just go away. You see, when you show up as a man of chaos and clarity, when you embody unpredictability and unshakable presence, you awaken something ancient in the psyche. You stir the archetype of transformation itself. You become a symbol of danger, of depth, of something more. And women don't forget symbols. They haunt dreams. They linger in silence. But here's the psychological contrast most people miss. If you're inconsistent, weak, manipulative, or needy, yes, she'll remember you, but not with obsession, with regret, with emotional recoil, with a lesson, not a longing. So the question becomes, what did you give her mind to hold on to? Was it growth, pain, safety, chaos? Did you show her a version of herself she couldn't see before, or did you shrink her into someone smaller, someone ashamed? The painful truth is this: most relationships don't fail because people stop loving each other. They fail because people fail to show up as someone worth remembering. They trade discipline for comfort, honesty for flattery, strength for validation. Want to be unforgettable? Stop trying to be liked. Start being real. A woman will become obsessed with the man who tells her the truth she's never heard before, but desperately needed. She won't forget the moment you stood your ground, not with arrogance, but with clarity. She won't forget when you challenged her instead of coddled her, when you demanded more from her because you saw what she could be, not what she was willing to settle for. Think about that. Think about the difference between a man who makes her feel good in the moment and a man who transforms how she sees herself forever. Which one lingers? There's neuroscience behind this. Emotional intensity encodes memory. When an experience carries weight, fear, awe, tension, desire, it imprints deeper. That's why casual encounters fade and radical conversations stay burned into the brain like a brand. So, here's the challenge. Are you the kind of man who causes awakening, or are you just another dopamine hit in a sea of forgettable faces? When you stand with a purpose, when your words cut through lies like a sword, when your presence forces others to confront themselves, you don't just leave a memory, you restructure a reality. But that level of impact isn't handed to you, it's earned through suffering, through solitude, through becoming a man who knows who he is, even when the world tempts him to be someone easier, softer, quieter. Because here's the final truth, and it's not comfortable. She doesn't remember you because you were nice. She remembers you because you changed her. And transformation is unforgettable. Mic drop. If you want to live rent-free in her mind, become the man who sets her soul on fire and then walks away with dignity. Why does she compare every man to you, even when she's in someone else's arms? It's because you weren't just a person, you were an experience, and experiences don't leave quietly. Let's be brutally honest for a moment. Most men don't leave behind a legacy in a woman's psyche. They leave behind noise, disappointment, guilt, maybe a few scattered memories. But a man who is deeply rooted in his identity, who brings clarity in the middle of her internal chaos, that man haunts her, not as a ghost of regret, but as a reminder of what real felt like. We live in an age of superficial connection, where people are terrified of emotional depth, where commitment is mocked and consistency is rare. But a woman doesn't obsess over men who follow trends. She obsesses over the one man who refused to lie, who didn't sugarcoat the truth, who looked her in the eye and said, "This is who I am. This is what I expect, and I won't tolerate anything less." That level of integrity, it burns into her. It shatters her delusions and forces her to confront what she truly desires and what she's been pretending she could live without. Now contrast that with the weak, passive, emotionally codependent relationships most people settle for. The kind where the man morphs into whatever she wants. He becomes agreeable, pliable, safe, but utterly forgettable. He says yes when he means no. He avoids conflict at all costs. He thinks compliance will make her stay. But what it really does is kill her respect for him. You want her to stay, be a man she can respect. You want her to think of you months later, wondering why she can't let go? Be the man who disrupted her world with truth, not convenience. Let me ask you something. Have you ever told a woman no and meant it? Have you ever set a boundary and stood by it when she tested it? Not out of anger, but out of principle? If you haven't, then don't be surprised when she forgets you. Because the male archetype that sticks with her, the one she obsesses over, isn't the passive provider. It's the integrated man, the one who balances his chaos with discipline, his dominance with compassion, his silence with certainty. That man, he enters her life like a storm, and when he leaves, the air still feels charged. Psychologically, this makes perfect sense. The brain remembers contrast, trauma, and transformation, not mediocrity. And when you introduce her to a higher standard, when you show her what presence, integrity, and masculine groundedness actually feel like, you raise the bar permanently. And she knows it, she feels it, she aches for it. She might try to move on, she might tell herself she's over you. But when the new man flinches under pressure, when he avoids hard conversations, when he chooses comfort over courage, she'll feel the absence of what you once brought, and it will gnaw at her. Because the truth is, you made her feel safe not by surrendering your edge, but by owning it. You led her without controlling her. You guided her without begging for her affection. You didn't just say you were different, you lived it. And that kind of man, he's not easily replaced. He becomes the psychological standard she subconsciously measures every other man against. Here's the mic drop. If you want to be unforgettable, stop trying to impress her and start showing her the man she didn't know she needed until she met you. What happens to a woman's mind when a man walks away, not out of bitterness, but out of principle? When he doesn't chase, doesn't plead, doesn't beg, but vanishes like fog burned away by the rising sun. It's chaos, controlled chaos. Because deep down, something in her psyche registers that disappearance, not as weakness, but as unspeakable strength. You see, most men collapse when the emotional intensity rises. They cave, apologize for existing, lose themselves trying to keep a woman who's already halfway out the door. But the man who can walk away, not out of pride, but out of clarity, is the man who becomes unforgettable. Because he proves he doesn't need her validation to be whole. And that terrifies her, but it also awakens something ancient in her. Now, let's think psychologically. Human beings are drawn to what they can't control, especially in relationships. When you're always available, always chasing, always reacting, she doesn't see strength. She sees instability. She sees a man who's emotionally dependent on her attention. That doesn't inspire love. It triggers disgust. Why? Because biologically and psychologically, women aren't wired to desire the man who puts her at the center of his universe. They desire the man who already has a universe and chooses to share it with her. And if you don't have that universe, if your entire identity crumbles when she pulls away, then you weren't loving her. You were using her to fill the void inside you. That's not love. That's addiction dressed up in romance. When you walk away with integrity, it sends a signal louder than words that you're rooted in something deeper than her approval. It tells her, I'm not here to be tolerated. I'm here to lead. And if you can't see the value in that, then I'll take it somewhere it's respected. And the silence that follows, it haunts her. Because the type of man who can disappear without drama is the type of man who's not operating from fear. He's not clinging. He's choosing. He's decisive. That's the kind of man who builds empires, not apologies. Now let's talk contrast. Weak men beg to be seen. Strong men become someone worth seeing. One is loud, the other is inevitable. She can try to replace you, but she won't find another man who left. Not because he didn't care, but because he cared enough to demand respect. That creates a loop in her mind. A question she can't stop asking, why didn't he chase me? And every time that question echoes, your presence grows. Because you didn't just disappear, you ascended. Don't misunderstand me. This isn't about manipulation. It's not about playing games. It's about alignment. It's about knowing who you are so deeply that no loss, no rejection can dismantle your sense of self. And that kind of man, that's rare. That's precious. That's what her soul is starving for, even if her ego fights it. So when you walk away, not from indifference, but from clarity, you become a paradox. The man who left, but still lives in her mind. Not because you took something from her, but because you gave her something no one else did, a glimpse of what it means to be truly masculine. And here's the mic drop. If your absence doesn't echo louder than most men's presence, you are never truly there to begin with. What if I told you that mystery, not manipulation, is what truly captures the heart of a woman? Not games, not seduction tactics, but mystery born from a man who has depths he hasn't even shown yet. And that depth, it's not cultivated through chasing her, it's cultivated by chasing yourself. Men are losing their edge because they've abandoned the mystery of purpose. They've become so fixated on earning a woman's attention, they've forgotten how to earn their own respect. And what's worse, they think transparency means full exposure. No, transparency is not the absence of boundaries. It's the presence of integrity. You don't win her soul by handing her every piece of your identity on day one. You win it by being a man so rooted in his mission that she becomes curious about you. See, if you're constantly trying to explain yourself, justify yourself, overexpose your vulnerabilities, you kill the very thing that creates emotional gravity. You rob her of the wonder. And psychologically, people are not obsessed with what they understand. They're obsessed with what they can't quite figure out. That's the paradox. Now, let's be honest. Weak men overshare. Weak men seek to be understood before they've even built a self-worth understanding. They mistake attention for affection and exposure for intimacy. But true masculine power isn't loud. It's felt. It's the calm intensity of a man who doesn't need to shout about who he is because his presence already says it. A man with mystery does not hide himself. He disciplines himself. He knows when to speak, he knows when to listen, and most of all, he knows that self-restraint isn't repression, it's reverence. Reverence for himself, reverence for the unfolding of connection. He understands that revelation without timing is chaos. So let me ask you, are you mysterious because you're afraid of being known or because you're too focused building something worth revealing? Because here's the psychological contrast. When a man reveals everything too early, he relieves the woman of any real discovery. And without discovery, there is no obsession, only exhaustion. But when he reveals himself gradually in moments of trust through acts of consistency and depth, he creates emotional velocity. Every layer she uncovers makes her more invested, more intrigued, more drawn. And what's the result? She starts thinking about him when he's not around. Not because he's manipulative, but because he's authentic, grounded, whole, not trying to impress, but impossible to ignore. This is not about control. This is about weight. A man of mystery has psychological weight. He cannot be moved by shallow emotions. He doesn't chase chaos, he anchors it. And in a world of men addicted to being liked, he's addicted to being true. You want her obsessed? Then stop bleeding your identity into every conversation, hoping to be chosen. Become so consumed by your purpose that she chooses to chase the parts of you that even you haven't fully discovered yet. Because in the end, it's not about hiding who you are. It's about being someone so real, so disciplined, so layered, that the more she sees, the more she wants to see. And here's your mic drop. A man with mystery doesn't make her guess who he is. He makes her earn the right to know. Why is it that the man who respects himself the least expects love the most? Why do we have this absurd notion that being loved is some kind of entitlement? You see, love, real love, is not given freely to someone who hasn't earned their own damn respect. And if you're a man who's built nothing within yourself, what exactly are you asking her to fall in love with? This is where most relationships collapse before they even begin. A man with no standards for himself cannot uphold any standards for a relationship. And yet he wonders why it's always chaos, why she pulls away, why she stops trusting, why her admiration slowly turns into contempt. But it's not complicated. It's because you cannot lead someone else into emotional stability if you're still a stranger to your own. Let's not sugarcoat this. A woman isn't attracted to a man who needs her to survive. She's drawn to the man who can thrive without her, but chooses her anyway. That distinction is everything. It separates the boy who clings from the man who builds. And what does he build? Himself. Through discipline, through self-respect, through sacrifice. He's not obsessed with being loved, he's obsessed with being worthy of it. He's not begging for reassurance, he's creating a life that radiates assurance. Now here's where it gets raw. If you think your brokenness makes you more lovable, you've misunderstood the entire concept of intimacy. Vulnerability is not about trauma dumping in hopes that she'll feel sorry enough to stay. It's about owning your pain with such maturity and responsibility that she doesn't see your wounds, she sees your resilience. And that's what draws her in. That's what builds trust. Not your sob story, your sovereignty. Let's talk about strength, because strength isn't aggression, it's not bravado, and it's certainly not manipulation masked as charm. Strength is your capacity to carry psychological weight, to look chaos in the face and say, not today. It's your ability to choose character over comfort when everything in you wants to collapse. And if she doesn't feel safer when she's around you, physically, emotionally, spiritually, then you haven't built strength. You've built a performance. So I ask you, what are you really offering her? Are you offering a man she can trust in a storm, or a boy who becomes the storm the second he's misunderstood? Are you offering consistency or just temporary charm that fades the moment you're challenged? Because the truth is, most men don't lose women to other men. They lose them to the emotional and spiritual weight they failed to develop. And once that's gone, she doesn't leave to find someone better, she leaves to find herself again. Because you made her carry what you refused to confront. But let's flip it, because here's the good news. When you stop trying to be liked and start becoming trustworthy, everything changes. You become a lighthouse in her world of confusion. You become the man she doesn't just want, but respects. And from that respect, love grows deeply, fiercely, and without condition. So stop asking what you need to say to get her attention. Start asking what you need to become to deserve her loyalty. Because at the end of the day, love isn't something you demand, it's something you earn. And if you want her to stay, here's the mic drop. Become the kind of man whose presence makes leaving feel like a loss. Why do we chase the thrill of being wanted, but fear the responsibility of being needed? This is the root of modern relationship dysfunction. We've become addicted to attention, but allergic to commitment. We crave validation, not connection. And the cost of that, it's staggering. We create relationships that feel good in the moment, but collapse under the slightest weight of truth, pressure, or adversity. Let me tell you something brutal. A relationship built on dopamine dies with discomfort. If she's only obsessed with how you make her feel when it's convenient, it's not love, it's emotional escapism. And you're not her partner. You're her distraction. So what do we do instead? You become the anchor, not the addiction. The man who offers depth over flash, presence over performance. And that takes discipline, it takes courage. Because the truth is, the man who truly wins her soul isn't the one who triggers her emotions, it's the one who teaches her nervous system peace. Think about that. Do you know what that requires of you? It demands emotional sovereignty. You must master your internal world so deeply that her storms don't shake you, they center you. You must be so grounded in who you are that her anxiety doesn't provoke defensiveness, but empathy. Not passive empathy, the kind that listens, really listens, and holds space without flinching. That is power. Quiet, unshakable power. But here's where most men fail. They think being calm means being silent. No. That's cowardice dressed up as stoicism. Being a real man means you speak the truth, not to control her, but to protect the relationship, and you speak it with love, not ego. And that, gentlemen, is how you break cycles. That's how you stop recreating your father's failures or society's toxic patterns. You stop responding to her with fear, with resentment, with avoidance, and instead you respond with presence, with principle, with strength. Now, let's go even deeper. What kind of man do you have to become to give her peace without becoming her emotional crutch? Because if you're not careful, you'll confuse codependence with love. You'll start thinking her need for you is a measure of your value, and when she pulls away to find herself as she must, you'll collapse. But here's the higher truth. Love is not found in constant closeness. It's built in the tension between freedom and responsibility. So don't try to own her. Don't try to fix her. Create a space so stable, so honest, and so strong that she chooses to return to it again and again. Not because she needs you, but because you make her better. But you can't fake this. Women are wired to detect incongruence. They can smell emotional weakness disguised as charm. You want her to be obsessed with you? Good, then give her something real to admire. Not your Instagram lifestyle, not your rehearsed lines, your character, your growth, your depth. Now pause and ask yourself, are you building yourself into a man who evokes admiration? Because attraction fades, admiration compounds. So here's the challenge. Stop performing. Start transforming. Let the world see a man who has faced his chaos and forged clarity from it. Let her meet a man who doesn't just chase her, but one who leads her through the fire of life with honor and grace. And if you really want her to be obsessed with you completely, willingly, and passionately, then listen closely. Become the man who is so rooted in truth that even her doubt can't uproot her faith in you.